Joined by Austin Therrell, Executive Director at the Association of American Feed Control Officials, more commonly known as AAFCO. Austin's career has been dedicated to serving the animal food industry through collaborations with the FDA, state feed regulatory programs, and feed and pet food manufacturers to support commerce, ensure safety, and strengthen the animal nutrition landscape. He has served actively on AAFCO's Board of Directors, Pet Food Committee, and co-chaired the Feed and Feed Ingredient Manufacturing Committee, alongside his work drafting and revising guidelines as part of the association's work groups. Austin was named Executive Director of AAFCO in September 2022, where he has since played an integral role in the final steps of pet food label modernization. Austin, welcome to More Than Kibble.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you on, so thanks for coming. And we're looking forward to talking about a really significant undertaking that will impact dog and cat food label requirements in years to come. But first, let's get a little background on AAFCO. So tell me a little bit about what AAFCO is and how it supports the pet food and animal feed industries.
Yeah, absolutely. So AAFCO is an independent nonprofit organization. And so we work to guide state, federal, and international feed regulators. We do that by providing ingredient definitions, label standards, laboratory standards, and we've been around for almost 115 years here coming up. So our members are government employees that are charged by their local, state, or federal law to regulate the sale and distribution of animal feed, which includes pet food. So we hold two main meetings a year that serve basically as a forum for regulators, industry representatives, and even consumers. People can kind of come together and can work on creating model laws, regulations, policies. And honestly, that forum serves the pet food industry by allowing them to have a voice in the creation of those model laws and regulations that govern their products. And it really gives the industry an avenue to support harmonization in those laws amongst all the states. We also have a memorandum of understanding in place with FDA that establishes essentially the AAFCO ingredient definition request process, which I think most of your listeners probably know, but that's another regulatory pathway for ingredient suppliers to bring new products to the market outside of the traditional FDA food additive petition process or the GRAS notice program. So AAFCO provides in that process an investigator that really serves as a subject matter expert to assist the industry in developing those new ingredient definitions and really helps them put together all the data that helps support the safety and utility of new products. So that's another big portion of what we do to kind of impact the pet food industry there.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Austin. Now let's talk a little bit more about pet food label modernization. You might also hear it referred to as PFLM. So essentially, this has been a years-long effort to help consumers make more informed decisions when purchasing their pet food. So tell us, how did this project start? Where does it stand today? And what are the next steps?
Essentially, PFLM started in 2015. We were kind of hearing those remarks from consumers, really, that were asking for more transparency and pet food labels that were easier to understand. So we recognize there's a desire to make some changes there for pet food labels to really maybe more closely resemble the human food labels that we see. And people really just want to know what they're feeding their pets. That process led us down the road to about 8 years worth of work and a lot of money invested by us into consumer research. We conducted multiple rounds of consumer research to help guide the work groups as they went down some of these paths. We conducted additional research to make sure those work groups were kind of on the right path with what consumers were asking for. And then even more, a third round of research that reaffirmed a lot of some of the changes that we were making. Essentially, the AAFCO Pet Food Committee kind of took that huge piece of work and broke it up into 4 collaborative work groups that looked at multiple areas of a label, like handling and storage instructions, a nutrition facts box, the ingredient statement, and then intended use statements. They all worked on those individually, came back together as a collaborative work group, and then they even put all those recommended changes out for a public comment period last fall. So we could solicit feedback on those changes from everyone within the industry and consumers as well, and veterinarians, nutritionists, people that weren't necessarily maybe involved in the AAFCO process could still weigh in and provide some feedback on some of those changes. The AAFCO Pet Food Committee took that additional feedback last fall, made some more changes, and then brought that back to the committee. That's a condensed version of 8 years worth of work. But at this point in time, just to let everyone know where that stands, the AAFCO Pet Food Committee has voted to accept all of those recommended changes from the work group. The board of directors accepted that recommendation, and now we'll be recommending those changes at our upcoming annual meeting next month in Baltimore. There's one more step and one final vote by the general AAFCO membership next month. And if that passes, then those will be the new recommended AAFCO model pet food regulations for the industry and our members.
Definitely sounds like a long time coming, and I'm sure that everybody that has been involved is proud to see the culmination of all these efforts, finally coming to fruition.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a few gray hairs within the process, so there's a lot of people ready to put a bow on it and see it through.
So, from my understanding, pet food label modernization really impacts four key areas of the pet food label. So, let's dive a little deeper into what specifically will change in each of those areas and what processors and brands need to know about the labeling requirements that will be updated under these new recommendations.
So I think some of the biggest changes that will kind of be noticed from the get-go are the visual change from a guaranteed analysis section to a new nutrition facts box. Model Pet Food Regulation number 5 kind of lays that out, and it was completely changed again to more closely resemble the nutrition facts box than we see on our human food products when we go to the grocery store. There will be a new unit of familiar household measurement, such as can or a standard measuring cup, one treat or one piece included in that nutrition facts box. The calorie content will also be included there, and some new additional guarantees like for carbohydrates and dietary fiber. The nutritional adequacy statement will also appear in that nutrition facts box as well to make sure it's clearly visible and the consumer will know whether they're feeding a product that's formulated for all life stages or a particular limited life stage. There's some carve outs and exemptions there for the industry for small and very small packaging. Another big change specifically is going to be the intended use statement. That will now be required on the bottom 30% of the principal display panel. Food products that intend to be the complete diet for all life stages and sizes will say, something like complete dog food or complete cat food. Similarly, diets that are intended to be a complete diet for a limited life stage might say something like, complete food for puppies that are less than 70 pounds as an adult, or, dog treat or cat treat, food supplement, food mixer. And those are just some examples of what consumers might see as a requirement there on that bottom 30% of the PDP. So that's a visual change, I think, that a lot of people will notice from the get-go. They also added a new voluntary section in Pet Food Regulation 12 for safe handling instructions. So it's certainly not required, but if a particular firm or manufacturer within the industry wanted to include some safe handling instructions for their packaging, they can reference that section and see exactly how those should be listed and what kind of images we've allowed for that there. In regards to ingredients, we also made some changes there to clarify that vitamins can be added by their consumer recognized names. And so we've kind of updated some of the tables within AAFCO, to show how those can be listed. There's a lot more, but that's just kind of some of the specific changes that will likely stand out to producers as they start looking to make some of these changes in the years ahead.
So it sounds like, from a processor and brand perspective, this has been a really incredibly involved process, from the get-go, but there's going to continue to be heavy lifting, in the years to come as this is implemented. So with that in mind, what does the timeline for implementation look like? And what are some factors that implementation might be contingent upon, like on a state-by-state basis, or any other factors that you foresee?
When we look towards implementation, there's certainly a lot of variables that go into that. Each state has their own legislative process. They'll need to work through that and their rulemaking process to update, potentially their commercial feed regulations or pet food regulations. So that's a state by state process that everyone will kind of undertake. as we look ahead, just assuming that membership will vote to pass this next month, AAFCO will be recommending that our members in the states utilize basically a 6-year enforcement discretion period, where for the next 6 years, as those states kind of start undertaking those legislative processes, that those state programs will use discretion when reviewing pet food labels. And so for 6 years, they'll accept old labels as well as the new labels as the industry goes ahead and starts working towards making those updates. So that's what we'll be recommending after next month. And we'll certainly have a lot of different avenues where we'll be working with our members one-on-one and other partners to ensure that people are using his discretion as much as possible.
Excellent. So do you see any other challenges that processors could expect to encounter? And also, if I might ask, what is some of the feedback that you've heard from processors as you are, nearing implementation of PFLM?
We've actually had a lot of really good feedback, and it's actually something that I think is special about AAFCO itself and the processes that we use to kind of make some of these changes. We're a collaborative association, so we never try to undertake any project, especially one of this significance, without weighing in, and receiving stakeholder feedback and making sure that kind of all affected parties are represented on those work groups and committees and so on. So we make sure there's equal representation for both the regulator side and the industry advisor side. The fact that we've been working on this for 8 years and we've done a really good job, I think, of having that feedback and, voice throughout the entire process. I think we've got to a point where everyone is very happy with the final outcome. And so as we've kind of neared the end of this and been reaching out and sharing a lot of this information with industry, we have just continued to hear really good feedback about the process and about what we've ended up with. In saying that, I do know, as we look down the road and look at the next 6 years or so worth of implementation, there's still going to be some challenges. We recognize there's going to be delays from vendors that industry uses as they kind of work to make packaging edits and designs, and even the software that's used in doing all that. There's going to be a learning curve to get things updated for some of these new requirements. We also recognize the industry is going to have to work on their end for, updating websites and other outreach material to make sure that there's some resources out there for consumers to understand where some of these changes came from and what the intended use there is. Then as we think about, some of these new guarantees like one specifically is dietary fiber. It's going to take time for manufacturers to kind of fine tune dietary fiber methodology to get new equipment set up and QA labs to run those dietary fibers and build those data sets. So we recognize it's across the board, whether it's packaging to the lab and QA side, that there's going to be a lot of changes and updates that will need to occur over the next few years.
Yeah, definitely a lot to consider overall. So as this initiative moves forward, what are some of the resources that are available to help processors get acclimated to these new label requirements? And how can processors stay up to date on, the status of this initiative?
Selfish plug here, but I think the biggest thing that people can do to stay, involved in the process and any changes that, are happening, and even some of the new resources that are coming out, is to get plugged in and get involved in AAFCO meeting. We put on an annual meeting each fall, generally around July, August, and then a mid-year meeting in January. So we encourage everyone to come to those meetings, to get involved, provide feedback through advisors and trade groups and to committee chairs, and make sure that you're aware of what's going on. In saying that, we'll also, over the next few years, we're going to be continually putting resources out on our website, both for industry, for consumers, for veterinarians, and a lot of different audiences that kind of explain some of these changes and help people know, where they came from. And we're also going to be doing workshops. I know coming up, we're talking about doing a workshop next January in 2024. We'll be at some trade shows, hopefully doing some pet food labeling workshops and so on. So the best thing to do is just to stay up to date with us on our website and come and be a part of the processing.
Well, I definitely look forward to seeing you at some of these future events. And I just want to thank you so much again for sharing such timely information on, again, what has been a huge undertaking and is finally now at the cusp of fruition. So it's been a pleasure to learn more, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same.
All right. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you, Austin.